What's the worst better off dead injury incident you ever read about? That poor bastard that got tortured by the cartel on video. Injected with meth to keep him alive and conscious while they peeled off his entire face and chainsawed off his hands. He brought his stumps up to his face and started screaming. And one of the torturers says to the other, "I told you we should have cut off his tongue." Then they cut off his tongue with a box cutter and then decapitate him, I think, with the same box cutter? Just next level evil. Locked-in syndrome apes n.wikipedia.org wiki locked-in syndrome is pretty fucked up. It's basically when you get some sort of brain damage from stroke, poison, overdose, etc. in the lower parts of the brain and brain stem, causing you to have no cognitive loss, but almost no control over your body. Most commonly the patient can blink and move their eyes, which is the only way they can communicate. I'd probably prefer that the stroke killed me. There is this famous court case Dax Cowart. Him and his dad were checking out a plot of land to buy and were returning to their car. Anyways, somehow, I think through a leak in an underground pipe or something, the air was just full of flammable propane, right? And when they started the car, they set the entire creek bed up in a real-life god-forsaken fireball. Cowart's dad died, and Cowart, having had all of his skin and outward organs melted off, wanted to die. The man had no hands left. Lots of grafting and plastic surgeries, and amputation over several years basically keeping him together. By the end I think he actually looked normal-ish. Doctors said nope, can't die. Man became a professor and lawyer and fought for his damn right to die. He has a documentary somewhere if I recall. And until just recently I do believe he passed away within the last decade. Man said he knew nothing but pain, and was basically kept up and attempt outside his will for a good couple of decades. Nothing specific, but I have seen agreement amongst healthcare professionals that individuals who survive extreme burns suffer a LOT and it's agonizing pain because the doctor has to peel away the burnt tissue to expose the good skin and nerves. I sunburn easily and I hate those. I certainly agree that a burn to that degree would likely have me wishing I was dead. There's a kid in the US, he's probably around 23 years old now, whose body was chopped in half in a forklift accident they amputated from the waist down. He was still living the last time I looked him up. Being paralyzed from the neck down is one of those. Had a patient who had cardiac arrest, brought back from CPR for a long time. The lack of oxygen to their brain meant they had strokes and brain damage. They ended up blind and paralyzed on both sides of their body. They could talk and hear, but couldn't even feed themselves, push a wheelchair, etc. Does anyone remember seeing the family on TikTok where the girl's fiancé husband had an accident and is now basically a vegetable? Sorry Ike, what else to call it anyways. She literally takes care of him still even though she married to another man and had the other man's babies all while taking care of her first fiancé. The first fiancé is just watching what was supposed to be his life play out right in front of him. Shit is sad. Too many stroke or brain injury sufferers whose families were unwilling to allow their family to pass peacefully. But luckily they survive and are now bedridden, unresponsive, incontinent and tube-fed, and will end up in a care home until they eventually die of aspiration or UTI sepsis. Maybe not as bad as some of these, but there is a video TV around where a man jumped and fell off a building, not 100 sure it was suicide, and fell onto what we call an Amsterdammerge. It's a post about a meter tall they put around sidewalks. So he got impaled from ass to shoulder by this post without dying. You could see a big bulge from the post around his neck shoulder. EMTs had to grind away the post at the base because they couldn't remove him and got him to the hospital that way. He either died in the ambulance or hospital, but I can't imagine that ride was fun. Skiing the K-12. David Jordan Robinson in 1983, his father gave him sleeping pills, covered his in kerosene, and then set him on fire. He was 6 years old at the time and he ended up having third-degree burns over 90 of his body. His parents were fighting over custody and his father planned on it being a murder-suicide, but I guess he decided not to kill himself. I know there is a book, and I believe it was a made-for-TV movie out there about the story. Fournier's gangrene. Not really an injury, but my patients who come in with this go through the most. Be interesting to see what ambulance crews would respond to this with. There is an acronym for this. Fubar Bundy fed up beyond all recognition, but unfortunately not dead yet. Something I'm not sure many will mention on this thread though. Mental health, been through the ringer myself, and honestly wouldn't want that for anyone. Any open book fracture seems like hell to recover from. The guy locally who fell headfirst into a vat of boiling oil at a Sunday fish fry and survived, he somehow kept the majority of his face up and out of the oil. But it got the side of his head, ear, and entire chest and arm, and torso. His injuries were extensive enough that he was inpatient for weeks and then rehab, and then home with 1 metric fuck ton of equipment. death would have been kinder. A friend of mine was an EMT. They got called to the scene of an attempted suicide. The person put a shotgun below their chin, was looking up, and pulled the trigger, only the shotgun was pointed too far out from under his chin, and only succeeded in blowing his jaw off. Tilt your head back and put your finger under your chin. Notice how everything above there is nice to have. It's not going to kill you right away if you blow it off with a shotgun. So they arrived to the scene, and this poor bloody man is attempting to find another shotgun shell and reload with half his face gone. That guy that spent 80 years in the iron lung machine. I believe he recently passed. Suicide by consuming loads of paracetamol ibuprofen. If the person fails, Aka is resuscitated at the hospital, its liver is destroyed, causing extreme pain and lots of other problems. In addition, I think the individual is unable to get a liver transplant because of the attempted suicide. I read a story about a trucker disconnecting his air brakes and the hose got loose from his grip and lodged inside him. The air pushed through his body, separating his skin from his whole body. He had his entire body degloved.